The sound comes first. Soft, metallic, like a coin dropped in an empty corridor. It shouldn't be there. Not at this hour. Not when every gear of the ancient lens should be resting in its iron cradle. A cold pulse runs through the chamber as the great mechanism shifts on its own, turning with heavy breaths of wind-fed steel. Something feels off, as if the air itself is waiting. A faint glow flickers across the floor, stretching toward the center platform, where the world always feels one heartbeat too slow. A whisper grazes the darkness, brushing against the mind with a strange familiarity that tightens the chest. The chamber seems to lean inward, narrowing around the silent pull of unseen eyes. The quiet becomes a question, sharp and urgent, as if demanding an answer no one has taught how to give. And then it comes again, soft, impossible, undeniable, carrying a name only the stars should know. Who spoke before the sky chose to listen? The chamber stills, as though the mountain itself is holding its breath. The echo of that whispered name clings to the air, trailing like smoke that refuses to fade. The gears settle, but the silence they leave behind is heavier than their grinding ever was. A thin tremor runs across the floor. Not enough to shake stone, but enough to unsettle bone. Somewhere above, the night sky shifts with unnatural certainty, as if something high beyond the clouds adjusts its gaze. Every instinct warns that the moment was not an accident, not a malfunction, but a summons. Yet, the darkness offers no explanation. Only the faint hum of something distant, waiting. The cold air brushes past like a warning as the corridor narrows toward the outer platform. The wind carries a brittle whisper. Fragments of a thought not entirely formed, drifting close enough to stir doubt. The sky above looks unchanged, yet it feels different, as though the stars lean a little too far forward. Beneath the weight of that silent attention, the ground seems almost fragile. Every step feels louder than it should, echoing through halls built for secrets. Something has shifted, not just in the lens, but in the world beyond it, and the sense of being watched refuses to let go. The night wind sweeps through the mountain ridge, carrying the same low hum that filled the chamber moments before. It vibrates faintly in the air, slipping beneath the skin like a memory half-remembered. The stars above form jagged lines that seem unfamiliar, as though their arrangement has subtly rotated while no one watched. A sinking heaviness settles in the chest, the kind that comes before storms or revelations. Something calls again, not aloud this time, but with the quiet insistence of a thought that does not belong to the mind it touches. The return to the observatory door feels heavier than the journey outward, as though the mountain weighs differently now. The silence inside presses with unfamiliar closeness, wrapping around each breath. The gears rest in perfect stillness, their earlier motion now an impossible memory. Yet the air holds the faint aftertaste of that whisper, as if it lingers within the stone. The unease settles deeper, not as fear alone, but as certainty. Something has noticed, something has chosen, and the night will not forget. The night stretches thin around the tower as the hour crawls forward, leaving the memory of the whisper heavy in the mind. The air tastes metallic, as if the starlight has seeped into the stone and refuses to leave. Faint vibrations hum through the wooden rails, subtle enough to doubt yet impossible to ignore. Something above moves out of rhythm with the natural turning of the heavens, shifting with intention rather than chance. The subtle ache of dread settles like frost beneath the skin, urging caution while the silence deepens. Whatever changed in the sky has not passed. It gathers patient and watchful. The sky outside churns in slow, deliberate motions, as though a vast hand drags unseen shapes into new alignments. The wind carries a thin cry that may be metal or air, or something older than both. Every breath feels tethered to a looming presence overhead. The dome creaks softly, the sound of stone remembering past storms, and a creeping certainty settles in the heart. The heavens are not merely shifting, but watching, and their attention is narrowing. In the dim workshop beneath the platform, shelves of brittle star maps rustle, though no draft flows through the room. Symbols etched by hands long dead shimmer faintly, as if awakened by a force rising through the stones. The old parchment seems to breathe, lifting edges in slow, deliberate motion. A chill presses close, not from the cold, but from the unmistakable sense of recognition, as if those silent diagrams know exactly what has begun above. The weight of unseen eyes grows stronger, tightening the air until every heartbeat feels too loud. The tower floor shivers in a slow pulse, matching some distant rhythm that presses from above. The sensation creeps through the stone steps like a heartbeat, not meant for mortal senses. Outside the narrow windows, the stars tighten into unnatural patterns, their positions bending into forms that suggest intention rather than chaos. The quiet hum builds again, deeper this time, vibrating in the chest until breath becomes uncertain. Whatever force awakened in the night grows bolder, its presence edging closer with every beat of the shifting heavens. When the tower finally stills, the quiet that replaces the tremor feels too complete, as if the world holds its breath before a vow. The sky outside glows faintly at the edges, not with dawn, but with something colder and more deliberate. The memory of the whispered name rises again, stirring unease that refuses to settle. The heavens have shifted in ways the old records warned against, yet no explanation rises from the ink or stone. Only the certainty that the night has chosen a direction, and it leads straight into the unknown. The moment the chamber door shuts behind, the air thickens with an unfamiliar heat, as though the stone itself trembles with warning. The great lens stands unmoving, yet the silence surrounding it feels strained, pulled taut like a string ready to snap. A faint glow shimmers across its surface, swirling in patterns that shift too quickly to follow. Something beyond the glass seems to stir, its presence pressing faintly against the barrier between worlds. Every breath comes with the weight of expectation, as though the room holds knowledge it is unwilling to reveal. The sense of being summoned tightens, undeniable and unyielding. The gears that have slept for centuries groan awake with a slow, grinding reluctance, moving without any command. The floor vibrates beneath each shift, sending thin shivers through the chamber, as if the tower fears the awakening of its oldest secrets. The glow within the lens intensifies, swirling into spirals that pulse with rhythm, drawing the eye toward shapes that defy understanding. In the stillness between each mechanical breath, something whispers just beyond hearing, words that nearly form meaning. The sensation carries the certainty that the chamber is no longer a place of observation, but of invitation. Old charts scattered across the floor begin to stir again, edges lifting as though reacting to the shifting sky above. Symbols once dormant shine faintly, their lines weaving together to create patterns that feel eerily familiar. Every sheet seems to breathe with intent, aligning themselves into a sequence untouched by hands. The weight of the moment deepens, carrying the silent realization that the diagrams were never meant to be studied, but awake. The chamber's air sharpens with tension as the realization settles in. The maps are revealing their purpose. The lens hums with deeper resonance now, its glow beating like a living heart. The air around it shimmers, bending light in ripples that distort the edges of sight. A faint silhouette flickers within the swirling brightness, forming and collapsing in uneven pulses, as though something struggles to cross a threshold not meant to open. The presence feels ancient, familiar in a way that tightens the chest with unspoken recognition. Each pulse draws closer, pressing against the boundary until the chamber feels too small to hold what approaches. With a sudden surge, the glow snaps into clarity, revealing an outline within the lens that mirrors the form standing before it. The reflection is not bound by glass, but moves a heartbeat before each gesture, tracing motions that do not belong to the one watching. It is a silhouette shaped from starlight, formed with impossible precision, as though the sky itself attempts to mold a figure into being. A hum rises, deep and resonant, threading through bone and breath. The certainty settles like a stone dropped into still water. Whatever watches from the other side is not imitating. It is remembering. The chamber darkens as the radiance within the lens withdraws, collapsing inward like breath drawn into unseen lungs. A sudden chill sweeps across the stone floor, stirring the air with an unnatural stillness. The silhouette that flickered moments before dissolves into shimmering fragments, each drifting like ash made of starlight. Yet the room does not return to calm. It feels poised, as though it braces for something older than the tower itself. A faint pressure builds within the mind, subtle but unmistakable, forming thoughts that do not belong to the one standing in the quiet. Something has crossed the threshold, something that remembers far too much. A thin ripple of light forms along the lens' inner surface, gathering into lines that twist like ink in water. Gradually, a figure emerges, not fully formed but shaped with the certainty of memory. Its outline moves with quiet authority, radiating a presence that fills the chamber with ancient weight. The air thickens, echoing the distant pulse of a long-dead throne. An ache rises in the chest, carried by an emotion not entirely one's own, as though an old grief stirs after being buried for centuries. The room leans forward, caught between awe and dread as the past steps into the present. The figure within the glow speaks without sound, its meaning carried not through words but through memory itself. Images flicker through the mind, vast halls lit by fire, a kingdom bowing beneath a sky that was feared rather than understood, and a pact forged in desperation. The sensation rushes through like a tide, leaving trembling breath in its wake. The truth unfurls in fragments. The tower was built not to study the heavens, but to hold a bond with them. The awareness burns with chilling clarity. The moment unfolding now is not new. It is a continuation. The memory becomes sharper, revealing a final piece. The one who once forged the pact did so not out of ambition, but fear. A storm of celestial force had threatened to erase what existed, and the pact was meant to shield the land beneath. But promises made to the sky are never one-sided. The chamber fills with the unbearable sense of a vow unmet, its echo vibrating in the stone like thunder contained. The presence grows heavier, leaning closer through the glowing lens, carrying the weight of unfinished duty. A final surge of light sweeps through the chamber, revealing the truth that binds the moment. The ancient pact never ended. It only waited for the one who carries its echo. A tremor rolls through the floor as the presence behind the lens extends its silent call, urging a response. The air thickens, charged with the weight of a choice long deferred. The chamber darkens around the glow, narrowing the world to a single question that presses with quiet inevitability. The past has reached forward, and now demands to be met. A tremor lifts through the chamber like a breath drawn by something immense, shaking dust from every stone seam. The glow within the lens deepens into a fractured storm of shifting lines, each pulse carving itself into the air with impossible clarity. The weight of the unseen presence swells, pressing against the senses until the world narrows to a single trembling moment. It feels as though time bends inward, gathering at a point just beyond reach, waiting for its rightful claim. A whisper hums through the silence. Not a word, but an invitation, or perhaps a demand. The tower seems to brace itself for what is about to emerge. Light fractures outward, exploding into patterns that twist through the chamber like cracks in reality. Each fragment flickers with impressions, towering spires, broken thrones, skies torn open by brilliance too vast to name. The air thickens as the sensation grows stronger, the steady hum rising into a sharp vibration that crawls across the skin. A force presses inward from beyond the lens, steady and unyielding, as though reaching through the last barrier. The chamber no longer feels anchored to the world below. It hangs suspended in a moment, stretched thin by fate. The pull becomes unmistakable. Something calls, and it expects an answer. The glow sharpens into a shape. A figure woven from starlight, rising slowly from the heart of the lens. It steps forward without movement, as though the world bends to make room for it. The air chills, tightening the breath in the lungs as the presence stretches across the chamber in a ripple of impossible calm. A low resonance hums in the ear, forming a pattern that feels painfully familiar, carrying echoes from a lineage forgotten by living memory. The pressure around the moment becomes unbearable, a truth gathering at the edge of revelation. A voice forms, silent, yet ringing inside the mind with clarity that leaves no room to breathe. It carries the weight of ages, filled with longing, regret, and expectation. A tide of memories surges forward, a pact sworn under a sky that did not yet understand mercy, a promise bound to blood and destiny, and a choice that once saved a kingdom at terrible cost. The presence grows stronger, brushing against thought with chilling gentleness. It has waited, endured, and now seeks what was left unfinished. The chamber feels suspended on the edge of decision, held still by forces older than the tower itself. The chamber falls into a stillness so deep it feels etched into the bones. The presence waits, and the weight of its expectation settles like a crown of burning light. The world beyond the tower fades into silence, leaving only the pulse of something ancient and patient. The moment stretches, held taut by the unspoken understanding that the choice made here will echo beyond the living world. The whisper returns, clearer now, unmistakable, asking not for obedience, but acknowledgement. The choice stands ready, carved into the very air. The chamber tightens around the moment, the air pressing inward as though the tower itself recoils from what gathers within the lens. A deep vibration crawls through the floor, rising into the chest like a slowly tightening grip. The brilliance within the lens sharpens into impossible clarity, revealing shifting fragments of a world that does not belong to this one. Distant skies torn open by light, silhouettes suspended in the void, memories that never belonged to mortal minds. A cold realization unfurls in the silence. The presence beyond the threshold is not simply arriving, it is choosing. And the choice threatens to bend the fate of everything beneath the stars. A crack forms in the glow, small, thin, yet impossibly loud in its silence. It stretches, pulling the chamber's light toward it as if consuming the very air. The hum deepens into a low thunder that rattles the bones, carrying with it a sense of inevitability that cannot be resisted. The pull from the other side grows stronger, latching onto something deeper than breath or thought. The pressure builds with each heartbeat until the chamber feels on the verge of fracturing. The moment presses forward with unrelenting force, demanding a response long delayed. The hum sharpens into a single note, high, piercing, cutting through the chamber like a blade of pure sound. It reverberates deep within the mind, tugging loose fragments of memory that feel both familiar and foreign. The vision of distant realms bleeds through the lens, forming landscapes etched from starlight and shadow. The air becomes thick with the pressure of a choice that has waited centuries to be answered. The world narrows to a single point, where past and present converge in a moment that cannot be deferred. The presence calls once more, its meaning unmistakable. It wants acknowledgement. It wants fulfillment. A sudden calm sweeps through the chamber, eerie and absolute. As though the tower inhales in anticipation, the glow within the lens stabilizes into a perfect circle of soft white light, its edges pulsing like the heartbeat of an ancient force. The sensation of being watched intensifies, settling deep into the core with a heavy, expectant warmth. The silence stretches thin, holding a question that has lingered through generations. The air trembles with the weight of destiny, waiting for an answer that only one soul can give. The moment stretches, poised on a razor's edge. The stillness breaks as the tower shudders, the glow flaring brighter than lightning. casting the chamber into stark, trembling shadow. The pressure rises to a peak, no longer asking but demanding a decision that will shape the fate hanging above. The air vibrates with raw power, tugging at the mind with promises and warnings, each thread woven with ancient intention. The weight of the moment clasps tight like an unseen hand, urging a response before the force breaks free entirely. The choice stands on the brink, and whatever answer follows will echo through every star that watches. The chamber glows with a brilliance too vast to belong to Earth, stretching the edges of sight until the world trembles beneath its reach. The air thickens with raw force, pulling everything toward the radiant center where destiny has gathered in a single breath. A low hum rises, no longer trembling or fractured, but steady, ancient, and resolute. The weight of unseen eyes presses closer, watching as the final moment draws near. The silence carries a truth that cannot be spoken aloud. Everything that has happened leads to this singular point. The fate of the sky and the land waits on the verge of a single choice, suspended between collapse and rebirth. A surge of force erupts, pulling time into a brief stretch where sound dissolves and breath freezes. Visions burst across the inner eye, shattered kingdoms, forgotten wars, vows carved into starlight. Threads of memory twine together, revealing truths buried beneath centuries of silence. Something ancient leans through the glow, its presence vast yet strangely gentle, as if offering not command, but understanding. The moment spirals into stillness. The choice stands open, neither imposed nor forced, but inevitable in its weight. The world around holds its breath, waiting for the decision that will break the balance. The contact ignites the chamber with a burst of impossible light, washing out every shadow in a single breath. A wave of warmth sweeps through the tower, carrying echoes of a promise once sealed beneath a sky in turmoil. The presence beyond the lens contracts sharply, as though pulled through a narrowing door, binding itself to a vow renewed. The weight of ages settles into silence, heavy yet strangely peaceful, as if balance, long broken, finally remembers its place. The trembling air steadies. The chamber inhales. Something ancient has shifted, and its movement feels final. Slowly, the glow recedes, drawing back into the lens like a tide retreating from shore. The pressure in the air dissolves, leaving behind a quiet that feels impossibly wide, as though the world has been gently rewritten. The chamber settles into calm stillness, its ancient stones no longer trembling but resting with newfound peace. The remnants of starlight drift like glowing dust, fading with each breath. A sense of completion hangs in the silence, not triumph, not defeat, but balance restored. The sky outside shimmers with a clarity not seen in generations. When the final light fades, the chamber feels larger, quieter, and strangely warm. The silence no longer threatens. It comforts, carrying the echo of what has passed. Outside, the sky glimmers with perfect stillness, the constellations resting in rightful order. The lingering memory of the ancient presence hums faintly, not as command or warning, but as acknowledgement. The tower remains, the world remains, and a new path opens quietly in the space between. The night accepts the choice made, sealing it into the stars with gentle certainty. What once whispered now watches in peace.